Alright, the status icons have now turned green, indicating that these have been successfully run. We can continue on to the results now. In the Results tab, you'll see that we have 3 reports to choose from. We're going to focus on the Equipment Overview report for now. Here we'll have a list of the alternatives. At this time we just have the baseline. In the future we'll have the rest of the alternatives showing up here. We're going to click to plus this out and we'll be able to see results for both of our building clusters. Now these results are not going to be surprising because we set up the equipment that already exists for the baseline. So if we plus these out, we're only going to see the equipment that already exists for the baseline scenarios. Here we've got the 4 boilers that we added in earlier, describing the boilers for their current central plant, and the high temperature hot water network. Now in the future we'll be looking at a number of alternatives and leaving the optimization open to choose the ideal set of equipment that would minimize life cycle costs while meeting all the other constraints. This is where we would look at those groups of equipment that have been selected in order to meet those requirements for each scenario. Once this has been completed, we're going to continue on to the Decision Analysis tab. In this tab, we're going to click over to the Reports and then to the Summary report. This report contains the highest level summary of all the information for the study. Once again, we're going to click on the magnifying glass so that we can work in this table more easily. Right now we just have the baseline alternative, but in the future this will be compared against all the other alternatives that are developed. First the base case, and then all of the future alternatives as well. If we click on this, we can expand this alternative out into the 2 groups of buildings, the centralized buildings and decentralized buildings. Now along the top we've got a number of headings going down for each of these columns. The first is the alternative. We can see that we're in the baseline alternative. If we click plus here, we can get some information on the alternatives themselves. The number of facilities for this alternative, but then also broken down for the 2 building clusters. Similarly, the total square footage for each alternative and then separated into the 2 building clusters. We can collapse that back together and look at the other columns. We have the total investment. Here, since it's the baseline, we're not going to expect to see any investment. This is the as-is situation. But if we had information in there, we could also have it broken down by the investment into the buildings and the investment into the clusters themselves. So here the cluster-related investments are going to be related to any central plant or large-scale renewables. Basically, the systems we were looking at in that installation or subsections portion of the tool. We can also look at the total equivalent annual cost. This is another way really to say the life cycle cost. It's just an annualized version of the life cycle cost. We can compare this. Many times this is the most useful metric when comparing the various scenarios. This is going to give us a total annualized cost basically of owning and operating the energy systems. Now if we plus this out, we can see the composition of that equivalent cost. We have the energy portion, and then the building related costs. Now these are only related to the building energy, the portions of the building that are related to the energy systems. So building upgrades, energy efficiency measures that have been added, all of those costs would appear here. And similarly, the cluster related costs, or those installation scale renewables, central plants, systems of that size. And the annualized cost would show up here. We do have existing equipment that has operations and maintenance costs, so it's not unexpected to see that we have costs populating this column. The total source energy, we can collapse this other one down for now. We have the total source energy for each alternative and then broken down between the building clusters as well as the total site energy. And here the site energy is broken down into the components so that you can more clearly identify the electricity component, the fossil fuel component, any biofuels. And on this final column, we're separating off how much electricity was purchased. In these situations, for the baseline, all the electricity that we used was purchased. We're not producing any electricity on site. For future scenarios, we may have some cogeneration or renewable energy production such that some of the electricity that is used is not purchased but is produced on site. Now the energy savings, CO2 reduction, and renewable energy, these are all based on another scenario. Most of the time we will base these numbers on the base case. So we'll compare the base case, which is the future case, to each of the alternatives that is developed during this study. Because we don't have another scenario to compare them to at this point, all of these columns are going to have zeros. Let's go ahead and X out of this for just a minute. Over on the left side you can see this alternatives here with a check mark. In the future we'll have a list of alternatives and you'll be able to choose which alternative you want to put the check mark in. That's going to determine which alternative is used as the base to calculate these energy savings and CO2 reduction numbers.